Hi, Dove here, and today we have a new episode in the Art of You series. And today we'll be checking out the work of Danila Kalinin. Um, it's a Russian artist based in well, no shit, Russia. And I found this artist on Twitter or X, and I really like the style of this 2D artist because it's very painterly, very impressionistic, and obviously there is a focus. It's mainly character design. So you don't see a lot of environment artwork or mecha or stuff like that. It's all fantasy. Well, kind of fantasy because there's a gun here, but it's mainly fantasy. And the environment's a little bit in the background, but it's not detailed enough. Most of the work happens in the character design. What's interesting though, if you zoom in, like there is some design elements there, but it's not fully like rendered in any way. So it almost feels like a mood painting. You know how in VisDev or visual development, you usually see more like environmental paintings, or when they do storyboard kind of artwork. Sometimes there is a character, but it's always involved in a setting or environment, right? In this case, sometimes there is some environment work in the background, but even without the background, even if the background is kind of like white or just a plain color of sorts, all the characters have a certain mood to it. So a lot of these paintings I would classify, it's not a full illustration, maybe some are. For example, this piece, it's a bit more defined, it's a bit more detailed, and you can tell that this one had way more time spent on it. There's a bit more development. Although if you zoom in on like certain areas, it's more of a not gestural, but it's sort of a one-stroke approach where you don't try to fully render the thing. You just kind of do enough to kind of send the message or for you to get an idea of it, right? So you have these types, but you also have these types where it's way more like loose. It almost looks like a thumbnail sketch or a thumbnail painting. And you don't just see a lot of hue variety, because if you look everywhere, there's like colors everywhere, and it looks like the entire spectrum is being used in some paintings. But also sometimes you'll see some texture brushes being used. So there's sort of like a wide range of everything. And I think it's a great way to balance the portfolio or your entire body of work. If you're just focusing on like one major thing, for example, obviously the major thing here would be character art, and it's almost always in a standing position or in a stable position, almost like a poster art of sorts, where it's not a keyframe art or a storyboard kind of scene. It's pretty stable, kind of looking towards you, right? So if you're going to have that and you're going to do a lot of it, you want to make sure that it's a bit interesting. I mean, you can make it a bit more interesting if you vary up the colors. Some pieces have more of obviously they have a cooler kind of vibe, and some have a more warmer kind of vibe. So piece by piece, obviously there's going to be some variety, but overall the entire spectrum of all of the paintings together, it almost looks like a rainbow of sorts, because you see all sorts of colors. It's better if you kind of see it all in one glance. But yeah, even within each painting, for example, this one, obviously it's way warmer, but you can see some cooler parts here. It's kind of getting bluish and purplish. And then obviously this is more of the warmer side. This kind of reminds me of Ares from the Mushoku Tensei anime, in the red hair. Anyway, I really like this kind of vibe where, I mean, look at this. Is that detailed? Not really, but you get the gist of it, or the energy of it of sorts. For example, this piece, even although I do notice the face is almost always a bit more developed. Makes sense because oftentimes the face is something we tend to kind of focus on anyway whenever we're looking on a or to a or in a at a shit at a character. But aside from like the hue variety and the textures, you'll see more of it in the background, maybe the textures, but in general you do see like a wider range of hues being used. It's very colorful looking. But I think also aside from these studies, in the more painted stuff, there's usually like a play or yeah, I guess a play on composition. Like it's almost always clear. It's a triangle here, right? And you have this spear to kind of balance things out. Now obviously this happens more in the painted stuff. So there's a lot of like framing happening here. So it reminds me of the work of Sparth a bit. Now Sparth is more of an environment artist, or sometimes a vehicle artist. But I think framing does a lot. If this were more expanded to the side, it would look kind of weird. So you want to make sure you know how to frame your pieces. So it almost looks like you're kind of taking snapshots of a certain scene. And it just adds a bit of it can make something look more epic. And the way you frame things can change, I think, the message or the yeah, I guess the message of or contribute to the vibe of your painting, right? And I do like how sometimes they'll show the studies, lots of like knight or armor work here. So you know, if you don't want to do like environments and you're just really into these sorts of things like character design, then focus on doing those things. You don't have to do things you don't like. And so far, if you just look at this portfolio or this body of work, like you can tell, and kind of like it's not even like something to think about. It's, oh shit, am I duplicating stuff here? Christ. You can tell this artist is enjoying their work very much, and I do like this energy where you're just not concerned about things looking so finished, and that's usually enough. But this one's a bit more developed. Well, the further you go down from the face, it does get more sketchy, but you get it. Now this one's a bit more sci-fi, I think. Although she is an elf, so that's interesting. But again, the face is almost always more, and the head more defined. And that's usually enough. You need something to kind of latch your eyes onto. Like this is sort of the foundation of the thing, because if everything is like this, it almost looks like a thumbnail sketch. But if you just make that one change of developing the face just a little more, then it starts to become a fuller painting. Even if as you go further down, even if it's a bit more like loose, it can still stand on its own. Unlike this one, because the face is not like finished or developed, it still looks like a thumbnail sketch. So you don't have to work on the entire painting, just work on this part, and it's kind of enough to, I mean, obviously if you're trying to work or I mean, it really depends on how or on what your end product is. I think this artist is more of a mood painter, more of a sketch artist, in that kind of category. Obviously, I would consider this concept art, right? But it's not like super detailed. It's more vibrant. It's just more energetic. In a way, it's kind of like the work of Feng Zhu, but except it's more concentrated on character design, number one, but number two, it's a bit more illustrative, where you can tell that the end product is the illustration and not so much the design, because even though there's a lot of like intricate patterns here, it's not that tight. So if you're not the kind of artist who's very into details, then maybe try to be like Danila and just focus on being more of a like a big picture kind of guy, right? Or a mood kind of guy. Um, and besides, you can even go further. If you start with this kind of painting, you can just, if need be, you can always detail it even more. Just check out the work of Ruan Jia. If these paintings were to be a bit more developed, you would get paintings like Ruan Jia's or Wei Feng, right? There are a couple of artists that are character designers as well that do paint similarly to Danila. I think Vergil Hoo is also an artist. He does a lot of like character designs as well, and he paints them very similarly to Danila. Although he's less brushy, he likes to use the basic round brush, stuff like that. It's a bit more like not tight, but a bit more not very brushstroke. Like you don't see a lot of the brush strokes. Look at this. I do like stuff like this where it's not completely finished. It's more of a quick sketch, but you kind of get the vibe of it, you know? Now this one I like way more hue variety, and if you look at the hands, like you don't have to do the little like folds or stuff like that. Like sometimes it doesn't even make sense, but it looks nice though. And obviously the face is almost always going to be a bit more refined, right? Look at that. So pretty. What else? Are we missing some pieces here? Let's just... This one's cool. Right? Because there's no face, it does look a bit more like a thumbnail. Now for the background, it's blurred. Oftentimes, I'm kind of... I'm not really used to blurring, you know, stuff. For example, when you paint the background or when you paint something in the foreground, sometimes you can add an effect called blur, and it makes it a bit more... or it adds a bit more depth. And I'm still trying to get used to that because it's kind of a waste, right? When you paint something and you have to blur it. But it works. What else? Let's move to the side here. Okay, some of these are duplicates, so we'll move further down. Sometimes you'll see like creature designs, but it's very rare. It's mostly more like chicks or knights or night chicks, right? And I do like these sorts of studies where the background is just white and you're not really trying to do a piece like this or this. And you're just trying to capture like a moment. And in this case, it's going to be this knight in armor. And it's mostly the top part, right? Maybe holding it's kind of a spear axe, right? And maybe the study here is mostly about the reflective qualities of the armor, right? And even if even if it's not fully rendered, you can kind of tell it is armor. Like you can tell this part right here are it's basically reflecting the sun that's above it, right? And the blue part is going to be the clouds or the sky, essentially. So, I think that's cool. This one, the face is a bit more defined. Some bits of the armor, there's a bit more like sharpness to it, working more on the edges. And because of that, because there's a bit more detail here and some sharpness in some areas like the armor, it's less of a thumbnail sketch or a thumbnail painting and more of a like it's heavier now, or it has more weight to it. Unlike this one, right? But any more? Oh shit, portrait. Not many portraits. I mean, obviously, if you focus on the character design, the faces can be worked on, but these types of paintings were just mostly focusing on like the top part of or basically just the head or the face. Not many, not much, but it's cool. And the application of the paint, it's still the same, very consistent style. I really like it. I did check the ArtStation page of Danila, and it's actually a bit outdated. I would recommend you go to the Twitter or Instagram page. I recommend, I will link all of these pages in the description below. This one, the brushes seem more different. There's a bit more blending involved, maybe with the mixer brush, right? And the background is a bit smoother. I mean, there is still some texture, but it's not as like sharp or gritty as these types. Very cool. Now, this one's a bit more detailed. I mean, it's still very like impressionistic, but compared to like the other stuff, it's a bit more detailed. Christ. Anything else? And the brushes seem kind of like it just feels very consistent, especially obviously the recent work. I like this one. It has a gun. A knight with a gun. With a, what's this? An M16? This one reminds me a bit of the Kazuma chick. The one with the yellow armor. Darkness. I don't know, it's the blonde hair and the wait, does she wear a cape? I don't think so. Anyway. Okay, that's it for this I guess art review of Danila Kalinin. I will link all of their links in the description below. And if you're really more of an impressionistic, very sketchy kind of artist, you don't have to feel alone because there's almost always a lane. Just go to ArtStation or even Kara, the new kind of social media platform or portfolio site for artists. The more detailed work, they do tend to get more views, and they are the standard like industry-wise. So oftentimes these sorts of paintings, they do get neglected, and they're not as given. They don't get as much. I mean, they do get respect. They do get attention, but sometimes I feel like it's just not ignored because this person has a lot of like followers on Twitter. It's just not the usual standard because I think it's going more or leaning more into illustration, and in concept art is kind of a sometimes I think it leans more towards design, but you basically have to do both. You have to be a good designer and a good illustrator. I do think there is a lane you need to be more of a designer for the most part, but if you're not really heavy on the design and you're more of the big picture type, you like seeing the overall mood, or you just like seeing the bigger picture types of ideas concept wise, and you're more of the painter, not much of a line work or 3D kind of person, then maybe you should check out the work of Danila Kalinin. Because it's so smooth, or it's so like energetic and very playful. Now, this one's pretty modern, right? With the coat and all. But the horns means it's a demon chick. Love the jeans though. Even though there's no texture in the jeans, you can still sort of tell via how the values are being played with, and even the slight detail here that it's very suggestive, but you don't really question that it's a pair of jeans, right? So you can communicate a lot with very minimal big brushstrokes, right? And you can always detail it anyway, so don't worry about like it's not useful. Just check out the work of Ruan Jia, right? Whenever he starts out his painting, because it's very loose, but eventually if you just keep kind of working on that thing, it can reach this more developed kind of style, right? But anyway, that's it for Danila Kalinin, and I'll see you in the next art review. Bye.